All right, let's dive into a really fascinating story today. We're going to break down the anatomy of influence by looking at this character, Kay, who starts out as just a silent observer in the neon-soaked city of Benzo Bay. We're going to watch them go from being totally invisible to a quiet but really powerful force. Right from the jump, the story sets this incredible tone with this one line. It's basically a promise, right? A promise that this is a world where light and shadow are in this constant, patient dance. It just perfectly frames the entire journey we're about to get into. So let's step into this world. Benzo Bay, it's not just a place, it's a whole vibe. Picture this, pale light, neon just shimmering on wet asphalt. A city filled with forgotten promises. And right in the middle of it all, we find Kay, who, at the beginning, is basically a ghost. Just an anonymous eye in a city that completely runs on rules that nobody ever says out loud. Now, what's so interesting about Kay at the start is this. Their only real power is watching. They're incredibly observant, but they're completely passive. For Kay, just watching is the game. It's the only game where they aren't guaranteed to lose. It's really just a defense mechanism, a way to exist without taking any risks. And that brings us to the real heart of Kay's conflict, this life that's just split right down the middle between two totally different arenas, two competing realities. On one hand, you've got the screen. It's a digital soccer pitch, right? The physics are perfect, the stadium glare is just right. It's a world where, and I quote, outcome belonged to Finders alone. This is Kay's kingdom of absolute predictable control. But then there's the world right outside the window, Benzo Bay, this place of, quote, indifferent churn, where the rules are all over the place and just surviving is a constant negotiation. This is the arena of chaos. And this really captures that divide perfectly, doesn't it? On the screen, physics bends to your will. The outcome is totally controllable. But out on the street, life just doesn't care. The rules are written in glances avoided, and survival is not a given. And it's this huge gap between total control and feeling totally powerless. That's what fuels Kay's entire journey. So here's where everything changes. Something starts to shift. Kay's passive observation, it starts to become an active study. Watching isn't just a defense anymore. It's now a form of data collection. And get this. Look at how detailed this data is. We're not talking about big, obvious events. No, this is about a dealer's thumb worrying a plastic bag, or a girl's hesitation before she crosses the street, even the exact sequence of emotions in a boy's outburst. Kay is basically cataloging the micro-expressions of the entire district. You can actually map out this whole process. It starts with isolation, just watching safely from a screen. That then becomes active observation, cataloging all these little fragments. And that leads to pattern recognition, seeing how all the little pieces fit together. And finally, understanding. The realization that the video game was only ever practice for the real one happening on the street. And this is it. This is the turning point. This is the moment Kay stops just watching and actually starts to subtly influence the world around them. They're moving from just an observer to a player. So the first experiments, they happen from the shadows. The fire escape becomes this perfect invisible perch. It's a place where the risk is almost zero, but the effect can be measured. The very first action is, it's almost nothing. Just a quiet, deliberate knock on the fire escape railing as someone is passing below. But the reaction, it's immediate. The woman below freezes, and then she hurries on her way. Her path, her pace, it's been altered by this invisible force. It's a perfect little contained experiment in cause and effect. And from that one little knock, the interventions start to grow, but they always stay quiet, always calculated. A soft knock changes someone's pace. A subtle shift in presence makes a drug deal end faster. A tilted head de-escalates a fight. Each one is just a tiny ripple, bending the currents of the bay without anyone even realizing where it's coming from. But here's the thing. Influence, no matter how quiet you are about it, it doesn't stay invisible forever. The district, this whole living, breathing ecosystem, it starts to notice. And this is when the game starts to play back. So what happens is, Kay's cloak of invisibility, it cracks. People don't just look past them anymore. Glances linger. Groups of people don't automatically part to let them through. Now they watch, they assess. The observer has officially become the observed. And you can see this escalation so clearly. At first, it was simple avoidance. Then it became assessment, where groups would just hold their ground and watch. That led to direct confrontation, a scarred man literally blocking Kay's path, a direct test of will. And finally, a new equilibrium is reached. A shoulder brush is deflected, a warning is sent and understood. The Bay is testing its new player. And that brings us to the ultimate lesson of this whole story. Kay's journey doesn't end with some triumphant victory over Benzo Bay. No, it ends with a much deeper kind of understanding that true mastery isn't about winning. It's about maintaining this delicate, silent balance within a really complex living system. So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. When you learn all the rules to a game you were never even meant to play, what happens when that game starts to play back?